Hey guys, so I'm going to continue with my bookshelf tour today. I'm just going to do it from here rather than showing the bookshelf because it's a bit complicated for me to get the camera at a good angle to show the bookshelf. But like I said, this is mostly an excuse for me to talk about books. So I'm just going to hold them up and I'm going to talk about them. So the first one is a bit of a weird one for me because it's a graphic novel. This is the only graphic novel I've ever read. The reason I picked it up, this is Blue is the Warmest Color by Julie Moreau, which was originally written in French. The reason I picked it up was because I really love the movie adaptation of this. And I also just happened to see this in a really nice indie bookstore in Austin, Texas. Um, and yeah, so this is a story of a young French woman's coming out as a lesbian, and in particular examines her relationship with one other woman. And that's also what the movie's about, but they do certain things differently. And I think almost the graphic novel and the movie do different things. They don't quite, they almost tell different stories. But both equally worthwhile, I think, which is an interesting experience with a book to film adaptation. If you've seen the film, I still recommend the graphic novel. If you've read the graphic novel, I recommend you see the film. If you haven't experienced either of them, then I recommend either or both. Yeah, so this graphic novel is a lot sadder. But yeah, so that's the first one up there. Second one is one I've talked about. I talked about in my favorite books of 2017 so far, The Epic of Gilgamesh. I recommend this translation by Stephen Mitchell and his introduction. It's really short. I mean, margins are gigantic. Could take you hour or so. So anyway, next one is a very weird one for booktube in general, probably a weird one for like the world in general, because this isn't a book most people own. It's the Penguin Classics edition of the Book of Mormon. I had a Mormon friend, and he always recommended the Book of Mormon. Not because he wanted to convert me, I emphasize, but because he felt like there were some great stories in here. And he always kind of wanted to share that with me because I was really interested in kind of mythological stories and things like that, or the stories of the Bible too. And so he thought that this would be a good interesting thing for me to read. And I got about 70 pages into it just this summer and just decided it wasn't really the thing I wanted to be reading. So hopefully eventually I read it. I do still want to, but for now it's just gonna kind of live here lonely and unread. Next book is The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. This is the first book I thought this was the first book I read this year, and I did really enjoy it. It's been talked about a lot on BookTube, but I thought it was fun and pretty moving at the end. But yeah, this has been talked about a lot, so I don't really feel like I need to say much about it. The next one is also one I don't feel like I need to say much about, but it is The Lord of the Rings. Of course, I love The Lord of the Rings. I've loved it for many years. I actually came to it through the movies. I actually saw the movies first, and then years after The Return of the King was released, I finally picked up the book, and of course, I loved it. So yeah, it is here. And the next one is really my favorite Tolkien. And it's The Silmarillion. This tells the story of the creation of Tolkien's fictional universe, or at least it begins with that, and continues through the history of the First Age of Middle-earth. So the First Age is, the Lord of the Rings takes place in the Third Age. There's a Second Age in between, and this takes place in the First Age, and it's a story of elves, mostly elves, but also humans. Humans don't play as big a part in this, but they still do, but not as big a part as in like the Lord of the Rings. But it's about the struggle of humans and elves against the Dark Lord Morgoth, who is the original head honcho of the forces of evil in Arda. Arda is what the real name of Tolkien's world is. Sauron was a lieutenant of Morgoth who kind of, after Morgoth was vanquished, kind of tried to take up his mantle. And yeah, I feel like the Silmarillion really puts the Lord of the Rings in much broader context in terms of the history of that fictional world, and makes the Lord of the Rings feel a lot more meaningful for me. The end, especially the ending, which I think I think the Silmarillion helps you understand the ending, the very ending of Lord of the Rings, a lot better, like where Frodo is going and things like that. So, and also the events of the Silmarillion are alluded to in the Lord of the Rings a lot, so it can help with that too. So, yeah, and it also just has a lot of compelling characters. Feanor, Fingolfin, Beren and Luthien, Turin Turambar. Yeah, just some very despicable. You know, people think if you think elves are all good, read the Silmarillion. Yeah, you'll find some real assholes among the elves. So anyway, next one is a book that its time also may be numbered on my shelf, and it's The Sirens of Titan by Kurt Vonnegut. This one I read when I was 17 for the first time, and it really blew my mind. Admittedly, my mind was easily blown at that age, but I did reread it this last year, and still liked it well enough to keep it here. Although my enjoyment may have been more for nostalgic reasons than because I really saw its merits. You know, the ideas in it are obviously interesting, but the thing is with Kurt Vonnegut, I've also read Slaughterhouse-Five, which I enjoyed at the time, but hasn't really stuck with me. And I also read Cat's Cradle this year, and really didn't like it. And the Cat's Cradle, I think, is what really brought out the big flaw in Kurt Vonnegut's work for me, and that's that I feel like his novels aren't really about people. They're about ideas, and the characters are just kind of pawns in the narrative he wants to show you about whatever aspect of life it is, and yeah, that's just, I don't know, that to me isn't very compelling. So yeah, but it's here for now. It may not survive a third reading, but who knows. Next one is one I have only read once but need to reread, and it's Night by Elie Wiesel, and I read this for the first time when I was 13 and for school. Kind of remarkable that I read it at that point, because I read almost none of the books that were assigned to be in school. But it had a huge impression on me, and it's the story of a young Hungarian boy during World War II who is sent to a concentration camp with the rest of his family, and just his experiences there, and he gets a real glimpse at the depravity of humans, not just the Nazis who are doing this to him and his family, but also to the other people sent to the concentration camps who kind of turn on each other in order to try to survive sometimes. So don't take my word for that. I obviously it's been a long time, but yeah, I need to reread that soon, and it will be pretty easy. It's only just over 100 pages long, so hopefully soon. Next book is a new one that I haven't shown yet. I just got it while I was away in Utah. My mom brought it from my dad, who got it from his mother, my Czech grandmother, who I'm in communication with via email on and off, and she was telling me about this author. And this is Thomas Wolfe, his novel Look Homeward Angel. So I haven't read this yet, but it's a coming-of-age story kind of about a young man who was raised in a town in rural North Carolina, and it's about him kind of trying to leave that town and kind of find his way in life. I don't know, the back of the cover says to find more rich intellectual life. So I don't know. I think I will like this. It is a classic, and I tend to like classics. So but yeah, we'll see. I will talk about it in a review, hopefully. Next book is Orlando by Virginia Woolf. This is the movie tie-in edition, which I just got because I ordered it used from Amazon. This is I think Virginia Woolf's most accessible novel. It's not necessarily plot driven, but it's more actually happens in it, I guess. And it's a really interesting examination of gender in history. This is about a man who undergoes a mysterious sex change, and also for some reason he lives forever, which is, yeah. And so it just looks at him and slash her, and Orlando's experiences with gender roles throughout history, and yeah, it's an interesting book. Next one is one I've talked about before. It's I talked about it in my slow read tag, Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse, which is another one I need to reread because when I read it for the first time, I read it too quickly, I think. The next one, yet another Virginia Woolf, is The Waves, which I posted a review of. I really like this. I think it's my favorite by Virginia Woolf. It seems to be most people's favorite by Virginia Woolf, at least among those who've read the majority of her work, and it is great. So I recommend it. I think along with To the Lighthouse, I would say that this is the one you should read slowly. I actually feel like you could read this one faster than To the Lighthouse. It's a bit easier to follow. I don't know, but it's very beautifully written. So anyway. And the last one is yet another one from my slow read tag, and it is Soul Mountain by Gao Xingjian. And this one is one I desperately need to reread. The first time I read it, I was not as good a reader as I am now. And the reason I held on to it was mainly because I think I kind of sensed that when I read it. I found it more baffling than anything. But yeah, that'll need to happen soon. I'm not sure when, but soon. But yeah, so that's my fiction. That's all my fiction. And next time I will be talking about my poetry books, and not sure whether that'll be 2 videos, but yeah, anyway, thank you for watching, everyone. Bye.